Hi there, I'm Christina Easton. I'm an assistant professor in the ethics of nonviolence at the University of Birmingham. I'll begin with a pretty obvious fact, which is there's a whole bunch of stuff that we all disagree on. In particular, we disagree on big questions. Questions like, does God exist? What values should I live my life by? How should I weigh those different values? How did life on Earth come about? There's a lot of disagreement on these topics, and the liberal state tries to avoid basing law and policy on these sorts of controversial questions. So, for example, if you want to get married, you don't have to get married in a church, because if that was a requirement of getting the benefits of marriage, then that would be basing it on a controversial belief, the truth of Christianity, and would be disrespectful to those citizens that don't hold Christian beliefs. Some liberals think that this neutrality ought to extend to the school curriculum, that we shouldn't put topics on the curriculum that are controversial, or if we do, we should put them there as an example of a controversial topic, and we shouldn't be teaching directively on that topic. We shouldn't be trying to lead students towards holding particular beliefs on those topics. In this paper, that is published in the Journal of Philosophy of Education, I consider this general question about the extent to which the curriculum should be neutral, and consider a particular case, particularly difficult test case, I would say, about evolution by natural selection and whether that should be part of the compulsory curriculum. I consider two of the kind of two dominant liberal views on this topic. And defend my own view, thin comprehensive liberalism. So to put things pretty roughly, standard comprehensive liberals would say that, of course, evolution by natural selection should be on the curriculum because this is the best available theory we have. Scientists have agreed upon that, and we should be teaching students to develop their knowledge because knowledge contributes towards flourishing. And so for these reasons, it should be on the curriculum. Political liberals are worried by appeal to reasons that are the subject of disagreement amongst citizens. They would point to the fact that some citizens, particularly conservative religious citizens, hold beliefs in literalist interpretations of scripture, but perhaps not even that. Perhaps it's just that evolution by natural selection conflicts with deeply held beliefs about an interventionist God who's deeply involved in the creation of life. And for that reason, they don't accept that evolution by natural selection is the best available theory. So to justify evolution's place on the curriculum, the political liberal would avoid appealing to the truth of that, but would look for public reasons that all reasonable citizens can get behind. So, for example, political liberals have tended to appeal to the importance of science and understanding the scientific method for going on to living an autonomous life, going on to live a life where you act justly towards fellow citizens. The trouble with these sorts of reasons is that they appeal to the value of science more generally. They don't appeal to specifically why the topic of evolution should be on the curriculum. So I think that's a reason to be concerned with those sorts of arguments. The view that I defend in the paper, or rather, I'd say I outline it in the paper, I defend it more in far more depth in my book, Teaching Values Whilst Respecting Difference, which will be published in 2026. In the paper, I just kind of outline thin comprehensive liberalism, which kind of roughly is a midpoint between political liberalism and standard comprehensive liberalism. So it shares with political liberalism a concern with public justification. When all things are equal, policies and curricula are better to the extent that they are less controversial. But unlike political liberalism, it doesn't take public justification to be a strict constraint on policy making, and it shares with comprehensive liberalism that we should also take into consideration other moral constraints. In particular, we should seek to avoid significant harms, and we should consider whether autonomy, equality, rights and justice are at stake. So when I'm looking at this question about curriculum content and whether the evolution should be on the curriculum, I'm asking, are there significant harms at stake here? And I think that there are. I think that evolution should be on the curriculum because it needs to be there as a necessary counterweight to creationism, because creationism has several associated epistemic vices, including that it encourages conspiratorial thinking and it discourages curiosity, it discourages an understanding of the scientific method and discourages trust in scientific expertise. So I make this case in the paper and ultimately do make the case for inclusion of evolution on the curriculum. But it is quite a contingent case, and ultimately it stops short of arguing for directive teaching of evolutionary theory. That goes against my own considered intuitions on the matter. So the point of the article isn't to convince you that thin comprehensive liberalism is the right view, because I don't think this example does show its merits. It's more to show you in what way my view of thin comprehensive liberalism is distinguished from its close liberal neighbours. The discussion, I think, also further illustrates the limits of political liberalism and its requirement for state neutrality. I think that taking schools' epistemic obligations seriously will sometimes imply the falsity of citizens' beliefs. And thus, the paper really highlights how acute the challenge is for liberals in trading off, on the one hand, epistemic considerations and promoting epistemic virtues amongst students, and on the other hand, respecting the diversity of beliefs that exist amongst citizens. So if you think this topic sounds interesting, do check out the paper. It's published in the Journal of Philosophy of Education.